Yes. This operation should only be performed while the vehicle is parked. If you are the passenger, please say continue to perform this operation.
I'm laughing whoever's driving and trying to do this.
Continue.
Refer to www.uconnectphone.com for a list of supported Bluetooth devices. Please say a 4-digit.
I don't know what's going on.
Jessica is pairing her Bluetooth.
Jessica, hopefully you got paired there.
So it's not allowed.
I'm so sorry.
This is amazing.
Select settings, click the meeting tab, click the schedule running to an hour, just click video, click the toggle notice of participation.
We're a well-oiled machine here, folks.
Yeah, Lisa, I see your note there. But
Yeah, I don't even know that you want everybody to appear on screen, but if you do, that's the
I see
the
it,
how-to.
but I don't see. I don't know if I
By
can.
the way, chat is disabled.
Yes, we're working on it.
You don't need to
vice
see
president of
us.
Zoom.
We just need to see you.
Right. Give me 1 second.
Shirley says, please mute me. Oh, me. Y'all are cracking me up on your chats.
So I can't see it. I'll dive into it more for tomorrow's for trying to get those settings set up ahead of time. For now, you do have the ability to speak. I would say maybe try not to talk over people when we get going here in 1 second. We do have the Q&As. If you type stuff in there, Sarah and I can see it. Mike, I'm going to make you a panelist too, so that you can.
Wax eloquently.
Yes. We'll be able to see your pretty face now, probably too, I bet.
Or in his panelist.
Yeah, it should be. All right, so we're at 363, so I can probably get going here. We're a couple minutes behind. I know I messed up the link. I upgraded my account. So for those that are just getting on, this is the chain of events. I upgraded my account to allow 500 people, but that's a different setting. It's called a webinar. So I had originally set up as a meeting, realized that was capped at 100 with the old way. So I had to start a webinar at the last minute. Problem with webinars is apparently it disables the chat automatically and makes it a Q&A. It also does not let me see all your beautiful faces. So that is what we're dealing with for now. So if you have something to type, put it in the sorry, I was trying one more thing. Put it in the Q&A, and we address it that way. And obviously we can unmute and make sure we talk to people as well. Kind of what we wanted to do here was, you know, I wanted to, oh, Sarah, stop answering questions on the side over here, distracting me. She's going on a trip. We wanted to do was we sent up the email out yesterday morning, and you know, thank you to Mike and Sarah for, you know, I think I got the credit for being the smart one, but Mike and Sarah had a lot of extra input there and eyes on it to make sure that it sounded smart. You know, I think that we just wanted to kind of touch base with everybody where our thoughts were at, and then obviously answer questions and kind of talk through some stuff and kind of hopefully calm. You know, it's funny, you read a lot of stuff, and we've absorbed as much stuff as we could here in the last couple of days, and you know, good, bad, or indifferent. We've been soaking it all in so we could give the best input back to you all. And then we've got this, you know, right before I'm about to go on here, I get the headline that says panic, you know, amongst all real estate brokers. That's the
And seismic shift.
seismic shift. That's the headline that that just came out on Housing Wire literally like an hour ago before I jump on here. So really my overall message, and I'm going to let Mike and Sarah chime in here, obviously, is that, you know, it's not a time to panic by any stretch of the imagination. And I want to kind of assure you that this is where we're at and this is what our message said. But, you know, most everybody's read we might break that 500 as a side note. We're up to 428. Most everybody has read the lawsuit or been briefed, but just as a quick summary, NAR settled their portion of the lawsuit against sellers, which is supposed to give absorption to all, or supposed to absolve all realtor members up to a certain point. Now, technically speaking, if those that are curious, we are not technically protected at Samson Properties because we did do over $2 billion in business. Nobody's directly asking us those questions within our brokerage lot, but I will answer that one. We are looking at the avenues of what that looks like when it comes to Samson Property and being a part of the settlement or not being a part of the settlement. So we are still exploring those options. So we are one of the 93 beautiful companies in the country that was on the separate list of people that were actually not covered by the settlement and had not previously settled. Remax and Keller Williams had previously settled prior to NAR. So I'm not necessarily here to address that portion as much. It's really the different changes. Now, the huge win in all of this, guys, is that they were going for the jugular. They wanted cooperative commission to be banished. They wanted the result of all this to be that buyers had to pay their own realtors forever out of their own pockets. So that was kind of their goal. I really believe that. And they've said as much openly. The net result of all of this isn't exactly business as usual, but it's not so seismically different than business as usual in this sense. We are still allowed as sellers or as listing agents to instruct ourselves, look, the best route is to offer out a commission to the buyer's agent. The buyers, we want that buyer to be represented. We want them to, the glare was really bothering me. We want those buyers to have their own representative. It's the best way to give you the most marketability for your home, to get everybody working with the buyer's agent in here. Obviously, that's our message to listing it to most of our sellers, because we think that it's going to be the best route to get them the most interest in their house, the most offers on their house, the best price for their house. It also selfishly on our end is we don't want to represent both sides. I think it becomes a very big challenge. We don't want that to be the way our world goes. And most of us work on the buy side. So we would like to keep a buy side commission paid for as part of the transaction. We can still do all those things. The difference is that the buyer op agency compensation field is going to go away in Bright, or CVR MLS or RAIN, whichever MLS you're in. It's saying right now mid-July is that time frame. That does not mean, and we've heard some good creative ideas, that does not mean that we can't put something in the remarks to the effect of seller will offer out money for buyer agency for buyer's closing costs. We cannot directly say, at least my understanding right now is we can't directly say seller will pay buyer agent's commission in the remarks, but we can reference buyer agency closing
We
costs.
welcome buyer agents.
We welcome buyer agents. We're willing to pay for buyer agents' closing costs or buyers' closing costs, which can be construed whichever way we want it to going forward. I think a lot more will be clear about what we can and can't say in the next 4 months. I think there's also going to be ways that we can advertise a separate website through our disclosures or in the remarks, where in your separate website, it makes it very clear what you are and aren't willing to pay out to the buyer agency. It just can't be on the MLS. It's not a required field on there. So I think that our industry is resilient. Our industry has like-minded realtors that 90 to 95% of us, I would guess, want the status quo and want us to continue to be able to pay both sides. So as an industry together, we're all going to come up with ways that makes sense, and that we can get through this rule with still being able to get that out. Now, with that being said, another huge part of our email was this. Buyers now are very aware that the compensation is more negotiable or more up for grabs than in the past, that they might be on the hook for it. You are going to have to show your value. As good as you've had to be at listing presentations and having your own presentation as to why you should hire me to list your home, I think we're going to have to all construct similar presentations as to why they should hire me as a buyer's agent. You need to be able to prove your value show that you're a good agent, show that they need our help to get the best possible conclusion. We are not buying sweaters online. We are buying a house. It's not that they can't find the house on some website by themselves, but to get to the finish line and have keys in their hands with the best deal and the best protections and the best protection during the process and the contingencies and the financing and the appraisals and making sure that we get there in the smoothest fashion, they still need us. And that part of the job has not changed. We just have to be more clear on what it is that we do during the process. The other thing that has become required is you have to have a buyer agency agreement signed, which look, we've been shouting from the rooftops that that's required in most of our
Right.
jurisdictions already. And even when it wasn't required, we wanted it, right? So I'm kind of happy that that's a rule. It should be a rule. And for those of you that are on the call and didn't ever get buyer agency agreements, kind of shame on you, right? Now you had to get them when you turned in your file, but a lot of you I know waited till the last minute till you knew we were gonna
Not pay the commission until you
we
had the
were
buyer
gonna not
agent.
pay you till
Yeah.
then, and then you had to get your buyer agency commission, and then you get mad at me because we asked you to go get a buyer agency agreement signed after the fact. So I think that those things are gonna have to change. We're gonna have to get more used to getting that agreement signed right away, which is good to have that discussion, to have the discussion on how you're paid. I think it will be more clear when we get to July, how clearly we're going to put that in the MLS, which listings we go into are offering it. You can still put it in your contract. As of now, you can still put it in there, even if they haven't offered it in some way, shape, or form. You can write it as part of your offer. We're writing $600,000. We also want the seller to pay 2.5% for the buyer agency commission. We think those are all things that are going to be okay in this new world. If for some reason they're not advertising it, they're not willing to give it in a contract, that is the time that you could turn to your buyer and say, all right, technically you're still on the hook for this. Could you renegotiate at that point with your buyer? Yes. Could you charge all 2.5%? Yes. But that is the way that we see this world. And I don't want there to be I don't want there to be hysteria that buyer agency is going away, commissions are going away. I think there's a world that it's maybe harder than 2.5% isn't the rule of the world anymore. That some sellers are saying, yes, I want to offer it, but maybe can we offer less? Commission compression is a part of any business when it becomes competitive. I'm not saying it will definitely happen, but I think that's a possibility. Some things that are not possibilities in my mind. Pricing is not going to change by this.
No.
Supply and demand does not get affected by this. If interest rates go to 8 tomorrow and people stop buying houses, that maybe changes pricing on homes and whether we have a strong or not market. The fact that buyers might have to pay their agent or not pay their agent or who pays their agent, that doesn't have anything to do with pricing. Unless all of a sudden all these buyers just say, well, if I can't have an agent, I'm going to sit on the sidelines. They're not going to do that. They're going to call listing agents directly. They're going to go to open houses. They're going to do the things that they're going to want to buy the house. They're going to get into the house, right? So I don't think it's going to have anything to do with signs or with pricing. I don't think our market's falling apart tomorrow. None of those things are going to happen. It's just going to be that we're going to have to be more clear on our value, and it's going to be a little bit trickier. They've moved the dial a little bit on how we get paid from the buyer agent side. So I want to reassure you on some of those things. We're going to dig into some more of the details on different thoughts and different questions we have to discuss. But I think that that's the general theme that I wanted to make sure I got out first. So John Corella said, Mike Briggs is the smartest person he knows. That was nice, John, while I'm talking. But
Come on, John.
And you can hear Bethany laughing.
by
from
the
her
way,
office.
we could hear Bethany laughing in our office like 50 feet away when I said that out loud. So I think that those are kind of my opening thoughts. Sarah and Mike, any opening thoughts that I missed?
I
as
also
we've
wanted-
gone there?
Yeah, reiterate everything you said. I also want to set the expectation for today that this is not a, can I do this? Can I do that? We've already got 40 some questions of, can I order this? Can I say this? We don't know. So right now, nothing's changed. Guys, nothing's changed. The way we do everything in the world, nothing's changed, and it's not going to change until mid-July when this settlement's accepted, and I'm sure there's going to be tweaks along the way because, the government's involved. Here's where we're taking this today. We want to tell you what we know. We want to give you thoughts. We want to give you strategies. We want to tell you how to prepare. But this is not a, how do we get around this? What can I say? What can I not say? Because we just don't know yet. We're still gathering all the information ourselves. So I am going to hold off on answering any of the, can I add this? Can I add that? Because we're going to keep doing business the way we always do. Get really, really good at explaining to your buyers what buyer agency is, and then further on have the conversation that we should have been having all along, but we never do, which is in most cases, the seller will pay. In some cases, they won't. Here's your fee. I will let you know if it's not covered, and then we're going to have a discussion. So make sure you're having that conversation up front. Make sure you're having that dialogue and that buy-in up front, not just shoving a contract in front of them, expecting them to sign, click, 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 and never explaining to them that they may owe money, because that's going to be problematic.
It
The
also,
other thing I want to
not take
say,
up, Sarah, and finish your thought real quick, but
Yeah.
I also want to kind of emphasize this point. Guys, it's still March 19th. Like, people are freaked out about their current transactions. Look, have this message that you're going to get today to talk to your
for
sellers.
new people,
But nothing changes until mid-July. And if that, we're going to have clear timing when these things do and don't come out. So the stuff that you have going on right now, proceed as normal. It's about
Yes.
preparing in the next 4 months. It's so long to figure out exactly what we can and can't do. But we will, I will at the end address some of these thoughts. But go ahead, Sarah. Didn't mean to cut you off. But I just want to
Oh,
make
no, that's okay.
people are freaking out about
That's what I'm saying. That
their
guys, nothing's
current
changing right now.
transaction. Nothing's going on with your current transaction.
No. And we'll give you, when we know what they are and we're leading into settlement, we will give you you can do the following 10 things. You can't do the following 10 things.
Messages for Edward House. I'm calling in regards
Hey,
to
Ed,
your
mute yourself.
unit.
The other thing I'll tell you is many of the jurisdictions were supposed to roll out new contract changes. And I saw a question in there specifically for Maryland. I am talking to Kara right now. Kara's on. Donnie, would you allow her to have panel access?
Yep.
So there were new agreements that were supposed to be rolled out in Maryland, not on buyer agency and dual agency, but on the contract forms themselves. And all of those were in conflict to what the NAR settlement would be. So everything's on hold. The one thing I will tell you is you will start seeing form revisions, and we will have a whole new set of libraries launching once this settlement does take effect. But guys, again, don't stress. We're going to guide you through. We're going to tell you what to do, what not to do. We're going to get all those forms in front of your hands. And we'll make sure we have plenty of emails and education and town halls. So again, today is just, let's get your thoughts. We want to give you ours. We want to make sure we're calming the waters. There's things we can control. We cannot control what the media does. So let's stop trying, but let's have our message ready, because people that you wouldn't normally think is paying attention and they're hearing it and they don't know what it means. And if you let them rely on Facebook and TikTok and the media to give them the answer, the sky will be falling. The sky's not falling. So let's make sure that we have our message ready, that we understand it, so that we can, get the right words and the right messaging out to our clients. Briggsy, anything to add?
So obviously, we're relying on NAR, or state associations, local associations, to update us on pending form changes. Also Bright MLS, right? So it's a fluid situation. It's going to continue to be fluid. I feel for the standard forms staff, chairman, committee members, and legal counsel at these associations and at Bright, because they obviously have a full plate. They will. I personally believe that we may end up with a situation where in Bright MLS, in the broker remarks or the agent remarks, there may be some opportunity for us to flat out offer co-op. That remains to be seen. There's been some speculation on that. But as Sarah said earlier, none of this needs to be implemented right now. We know that you all are already talking with some clients, or you soon will be, which will be coming online in July, after July 1st. So hopefully we'll all be up to speed on best practices and language to use and company policy and all of that sooner rather than later. I just want to say that I hope that all of our troops, all of our people will remain comfortable, as I am, with the fundamental core concept of co-op compensation, which has been the foundation of MLS forever, basically. It's the foundation of our marketplace. I've always felt that it is obviously core to creating creating that marketplace that does benefit sellers and buyers, listing brokers, selling brokers, the whole industry. I firmly believe that a lot of what this lawsuit was about is misguided, misinformed. We'll see in the end who benefits the most, but I really think it was an error in judgment for that jury to conclude that that co-op compensation somehow hurts sellers. So there, that core message is, please don't be. I hope that you're not going to actively be getting super creative on alternative ways of business. Yes, there's going to be fallout, but as Sarah said, and as Lynn Hamilton and Richard Bridges and all of us are actively preaching and will continue to invest in yourself. The stronger agents that know how to articulate the value that they bring, know how to articulate the resources that you have available to you here at Samson Properties as support, which means support for you and importantly support for our clients, are real. And those who don't take the time to learn up and perfect their professional presentations, their underlying skill set with listing presentations, buyer presentations, you may be impacted. A lot of people are hearing this is bound to thin the herd of real estate agents, and we'll see. Donnie and Sarah and I have been through some ups and downs in the market. It's no coincidence in my mind that this is all falling on the heels of the most protracted sellers market that we've had. In a long, long time. Most markets have turned more to neutral, or the pendulum swings back to buyer markets. And if we can assume that sooner or later that's going to happen, you're going to see what always happens, and that's sellers, builders, listing brokers offering out increasing commissions. But I would go about advising the clients, the sellers and the buyers, just as you have been. Our system with the cooperative compensation has worked, and I hope that we will see that good, reasonable compensation for buyer brokers will remain in our market. We all know how hard you're working. It's hard as hell to be a buyer. My fear is that this could contribute further to low inventory. That's what's so upsetting to me about this is we need more inventory. And so the whole MLS with buyer broker co-op is designed to make more inventory universally available. So I hope that we're going to see things settle down, and the vast majority of brokerages are going to continue to list in MLS and not increasingly go off market. That's the biggest problem in our market. Besides interest, it's not the interest rates. That's a contributing factor, but it's just the lack of inventory is what is driving the frenzy, the greed factor, and hurting the buyers, hurting the whole market. Guess that's all I got at the moment.
That's fine. Let's I'm gonna buzz through a couple of these questions, and
Yeah, I was going to say,
it'll probably
we
hit
can
a
just
bunch
knock
of
out.
people's, but so John Horton started with saying, please discuss a VA buyer later in the call. John, this is one of the fundamental questions that we have when it comes to buyers paying their own agents. VA buyers aren't technically fundamentally allowed to right now, right? Pay their own agent, and low money down, but buyers can't afford to. I would think that if this becomes fruition, VA is going to have to come out with some kind of modification of change. We're going to be able to get the sellers to pay their buyer agent commission in a lot of transactions, but there's going to be sometimes they can't. And I don't know how VA clients are going to be able to get into contracts with the idea that they might have to pay them and they're not allowed to. So I think that's a very open question, John, that we don't frankly have the answer to, but I think it's one that has to be solved before
Yes.
July. For
Months ago, by the way, Donnie and everybody, months ago, the attorneys at NVAR, I asked that direct question. I mean, that's been a controversial subject for so long. It's just crazy. And I mean, NVAR told me that their sources definitely point to a revision of that Veterans Administration restriction.
Ray asked about if, Warren Buffett and Berkshire has appealed to the Supreme Court. If he prevails, how will it affect NAR settlement? I don't have a great answer on that either, Ray. I mean, other than the fact that, unless they appeal and win and they're able to get absolution for all of the realtors out there, NAR is going to have a tough time, trying to win through that battle. So I don't have 100% assurance on that. I think that the world's going to have to start proceeding as this settlement is the answer, in the next 4 months, unless we're told something differently. And I certainly hope Warren's able to be successful and, we can put this to bed and go back to our old ways, but I'm not necessarily counting on that right now. Dave, Haji, I don't know how to say your last name. Sorry, Dave. So he's Haggy. So this is one that I had, which is the listing agent setting up a URL, like 123 Main Street, and then on that website, you say that you're offering a commission. I actually see a world that this becomes common practice. I mean, a lot of us already have single property websites set up or Facebook websites or whatever it is for the listing. So I think that that's a real life possibility, that it could be that if you can't write it in there, that you can create a link that goes to a separate page, whether it's the showing time. It could be in the showing time. People have said that maybe it's in showing time. When you go to set up a showing, right in the remarks in showing time, it says whether they're offering something out or not. It's not technically the MLS, right? It's in a separate form. So I think that separate websites, showing time instructions, I think all of these are reasons that we're going to come up with good answers as to how we can communicate this with each other. I don't think I can speak with authority knowing 100% what will and won't be allowed to get there, but I think that those are good ideas.
And that goes along too with Elaine and Natalie on marketing materials and sign writers and welcome buyers, things like that. We just don't know yet.
Yeah, I think they're all good ideas. Both of you, Elaine and Natalie, bringing those up. I just think it's a matter of what will and won't be allowed. But I think, if they're allowed, we're going to be into all those things. Lynn wanted to make sure we knew, and Lynn, I brought you up even in our, I think in our email. I don't know if it stayed in there or not, but it was in there. But Lynn does a lot of great training on buyer presentations. It's up on Samson University now. I think I emphasized this in our email that went out yesterday, but we're going to double down on a lot more buyer trainings, whether it's buyer presentations, how to have commission questions, how to do buyer agency agreements, and make sure that they're a part of what we do. It's going to be a huge focus of a lot more of our training here in March, April, May, June, July, and going forward. Not that it hasn't been already with Lynn doing great teaching on it, but it's going to be obviously be more of what we talked about. Allison Pages, and a portion of the listing brokers competition is offered. What would this be called? I don't know how it's any different than what we're doing now. It's still co-op. Commission. So I would guess, and I would venture to say that our listing agreements, and Mike and Sarah, you can tell me if you think I'm off, or Kara, I guess you're on here still as a panelist too, is I don't think it looks any different. I think that there might be stuff that are you muted? I didn't mean
She may have muted on her end.
Okay.
Sarah, unmute yourself. There you go. Left.
Is that there is I would think it says, okay, I'm going to pay 5% in commission for argument's sake, and we're going to pay 2.5% if the buyer's agent is represented. And it might be something in the remarks that say if a buyer agent isn't represented, then my commission is X. A lot of you are probably doing similar things like that now, but it's not really any different when it comes to co-op commission. The only difference is we can't put the co-op commission in a spot in MLS. That's the only real difference right in it. Wait, they haven't outlawed sharing that commission between brokers on any level. Just about the fact that we can advertise it in their MLS system. Kathleen asked, when is it needed? Buyer agency and before it's
Again.
first sensitive conversation about a property. I mean, I would say that's still the same thing, right?
That's license law. That's
That's license law. Yeah, that's not. Yeah.
And it's not actually in every state, I don't think. Some states have it. I mean, West Virginia didn't require it and still doesn't, I guess, until now.
They are expecting those changes to be made to be similar.
Yeah, it'll all be across all of our footprint now that everybody's going to require this. you know, and
But to Kathleen's point, best practices at the earliest possible time.
Yeah, earliest possible moment.
Early-
Work on your buyer
possible.
presentation, your value proposition, the value to the buyer. It's not just about locking them down.
Yeah.
And Aaron,
Our
yeah,
policy is going to continue to be probably what it is. I mean, absolutely, the latest is when you write an offer or
But
put
it-
in-
you know,
put in
but
a
I'll
rental
tell
offer.
you, I got a problem with that, guys.
I
If you
know.
guys wait until you do
I
an
know.
offer and they find it on their own, you're gonna have a really hard time securing your commission if the seller's
they're
not
not
paying.
gonna want that
That's
commission
right.
then, because they're gonna think they can get it for less, because they found it themselves. And then you introduce the idea of compensation.
Right, you better have that thing done before you put them in your car.
Right.
Yeah.
Do details of a buyer agency agreement need to be disclosed to sellers and their agents? No.
No, Aaron, there's still private documents between your brokerage and you and the client, so no, they do not get disclosed.
Jack asked, in the buyer agency agreement, can't we keep it as 3% or minimum 2% guaranteed by the buyer verbiage?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's no
that's fine.
question. That's fine. You know, I think that's, you know, a decent way to go about this. You know, you'd say, you know, whether it's 3% and a minimum of 2% or 2.5% with a minimum of 1.5%, if nobody's willing to pay me or whatever the case may be.
Donnie,
these
if I
things
may,
fall up there.
some of the agents may start utilizing additional terms in their buyer agency agreements or an addendum. You know, I think there's additional terms section, other provisions section in the buyer agency agreements of all of the forms publishers, where, you know, you can clarify for that buyer that if, you know, and you should, if they come across a property that isn't offering out the minimum brokerage commission compensation that's being negotiated and agreed upon here, then there are other alternatives. I mean, the buyer will have a decision to make, including possibility of adding it into their offer to have compensation paid to Samson Properties on behalf of the buyer, or compensation at a credit commission, you know, a closing cost subsidy, so that eases, that facilitates the buyer paying the compensation themselves. They're getting it in a roundabout way as a seller concession. But it can all, you know, I believe this is going to shake out that the buyer's offer itself can certainly put in there a term of the offer that the seller and the listing broker or the seller are going to cover that.
I think that'll be allowed as part of the offer. You know,
Yep.
now sellers can say no if they've got 10 offers, but I think it shakes out.
'Cause that's already out there right now.
Yeah.
And Maryland, the form was approved. A form like that is coming out in October anyway, even prior to this.
Yeah, and I think that probably is going to be rushed forward, I'm sure, you know, with some of this stuff becoming more prominent.
Yeah. Let's skip over a couple questions, stay on this compensation discussion so we can nail down all these, Donnie. Gary, you asked about our option of the 2.5% to buyers agents offered out. We changed that about 6 months ago. So there is no minimum or maximum amounts that a listing agent or a seller has to offer out to the buyer's agent any longer. We changed that about 6 months ago. There's a couple more on here about varying rates. Cornell said, is it permissible for a seller's agent to propose varying commission rates to different buyer's agents? You know, I'd be very careful with that. We're going to skirt down a discrimination hole in very quick form. That's a slippery slope. I would, at the most, what I would do is say, if they come unrepresented, this is your commission. A varying commission level for representation or not. I wouldn't necessarily get into if this agent brings it or that agent brings it or another agent brings it or this company brings it. I wouldn't go down that hole.
Yeah, I'd be very careful. If there's something specific you want to write in there, I would run it by a broker, Cornell. But I would not feel comfortable with anything outside of what Sarah's saying. If they bring it, if they're represented, if they're not, then it's a different commission structure.
Anonymous said, how do we handle buyers who only have just enough to close and can't afford to pay our commission? Yeah.
Write it in the offer.
You got to write it in the offer.
You got to write in the offer and try to get it out. Or if they say no, then you have choices. You could
The
not get
business
paid.
decision for you at that point.
Yeah, business decision for you, how, you know, you have to work it through, but technically if they've got a buyer agency commission, they're due the money. Now you could always waive it. That's your decision to make. But the goal would be to fight to get that in the offer.
This is speculative, but I've read that the lending industry, you know, maybe there's going to be some some real conversations with HUD for FHA programs, with VA, with Fannie and Freddie, where some of this can be built into the mortgage. If a seller categorically refuses, if it can't be negotiated into the price, which is what it's always been negotiated into the price. That's the ironic thing. Even if you come to a price and then that, and then you go up from there, that's really what we've been doing, right? But maybe it'll be able to be built into mortgage financing.
Yeah, I think that's also a possibility in the future that we're not really sure about, right? And I think that I would like to see it that way if that was possible, but there's appraisal issues and other things that could come into play. I'm going to take Tammy's question there. Will Samson put out something you would prefer for us to say to share with our clients, or are we free to come up with our own explanation? You're certainly free to come up with your own explanation. I think it's possible we come up with something. I'm not in a rush always to be first, with coming out with something, because I want to kind of absorb it all in and take the tenor of everything. I think it is important, to understand, like Natalie, a couple lines below says CNN Business sent out a news release. The 6% commission on buying or selling a home is gone after Realtors Association agrees to seismic settlement. And it's fake news. I think that the reality is we're dealing with some of these headlines and some of the people out there that are saying crazy stuff, right? None of that's true. The 6% commission is not even a thing. It's always been negotiable, right? I think they're running with certain stories that they want to run with, right? There's people on this call that it took 4.5%, 5%, 5.5%, 6%, 6.5% on their last commissions. There's no standard. I think they're trying to battle they're trying to fight a battle or trying to talk about a battle that really had nothing to do with this whole argument. But, and so I think that, Tammy, your own way of saying it is always going to be most authentic, but I do think that we should probably come up with something that we can easily you all can give to your clients when they come from
When they
that.
contact you.
Right.
In other words, do you really need to put it out to your client base? I can see that that's one angle is we're on top of the industry, and we realize that some of you clients are seeing this on the news.
Yeah.
Because it's in all the big media. But it's either that or you if you do that, I would just say, if you have any questions or concerns, let's talk, rather than try to frame the whole thing up in a
Right.
press release.
Cindy asked if we're going to create scripts for discussing buyer agency commissions with clients. I think Lynn's probably got some of those already.
She has those online already. Yep.
Yeah, and I think we'll probably continue to add more training and more thoughts around this. Arella said, SP leadership, how are some agents able to leave NAR as their association? I'm not prepared to do those things right now. You're not able to actually leave NAR as your association if you work for our brokerage right now, unfortunately. That's a decision that's made on the brokerage level, that to work here, you have to be a part of association, because we are. Now, if we decided to disengage from all associations, then we could be that way. I don't think that that's on my flight path at all, and I don't want to speak for, Karen, Mike, and Sarah that are, staring their faces staring at me on the Zoom right now. But, I think there's a lot of value that the associations bring. I think that there's a lot of training, a lot of leadership, a lot of advocacy, a lot of forums, a lot of things that our association brings. We could argue all day that they could have fought us better they could have fought harder or better, or won the lawsuit. And, we all wish those things were true, right? But, it certainly doesn't mean that they're doing nothing for us. And it certainly doesn't mean that they dropped the ball or didn't drop the ball. But I think this is disconnecting from all the associations that hold our ethics and our rules and what it means to be a realtor, I think is jumping into the wild, wild west that I'd like to not be a part of. I'd like to be with the rest of everybody.
We're proud to be realtors, right?
Yeah.
38 years. Okay.
Right.
And we got a lot of
We're
people.
proud to be realtors, and really that's the system that keeps us in cooperating with these commissions. If we jump to the wild, wild west, and everybody jumps to the wild, wild west, and all of a sudden there is no cooperation between realtors because we're all not a part of associations or part of any kind of ethical standard together, then yeah, good luck getting your money then. At least now we're kind of on the same path. But You try to get somebody
We
off,
all operate on the same playing field.
right? You try to
It's
get somebody
different.
off the street to pay you all this money, it's gonna be, we don't want Zillow and Realtor.com and Homes.com to be the homes for where everybody looks for homes. We want MLS, we want structure, we want a system that we can all be compensated and people think realtor is a profession that they should value. So I think all of us leaving association starts to pull that apart at the seams a little bit.
And are they gonna bleed some members? Yeah. Are the dues gonna go up in the next couple of years? Not this year, but next year or the year after, they might.
Right.
But it's a cost of doing business. It's a tax deductible business expense, your local, state, just like any other business expenses you have. And I encourage everybody to dive in to their local and state national association and discover some of the resources that you never knew were there.
They are, the National Association is offering the ABR class for free and no charge right now. Now if you wanted the designation, you have to pay for that every year, but at least the class right now, in light of this whole situation, in order to educate buyers, get some confidence, some knowledge, that if you go to become.abr.realtor, you can sign up and take that class at no
It's the
charge.
accredited buyer representative.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's worth doing. It's
Yeah,
No.
even just for the education, if you're not going to continue actually pay for the designation, the class is free.
Oh, wait a minute. Did I just open up the chat?
I'm on the chat, taking things off the chat as we answer them.
Well, no, that's our Q&A. Try to type in the chat, somebody. Oh,
Oh, wow. Here you go.
I turned it on.
Uh-oh.
I'm crazy. Uh-oh, watch
I
out.
don't know that that's a good thing.
Maybe I should have done that. And I think Sammer made a great point on here on our Q&A that, I think we get an opportunity to show our value and experience to buyers and show the profession that it is. Mike talks about, are we going to bleed realtors, or the association is going to lose some people? Possibly, but I think those are realtors that don't want to focus on being truly professional and doing their job in the way that we need to do it. So I think if you're on here already, you're serious enough about your job to learn the best paths going forward and make sure we're all together. So I think if we do the right things and we can show our value and we know our contracts and our value, I think that we're going to be in a lot better shape together. So it does give us that chance to rise up, and do a better job of doing, handling our profession. A lot about the news media. I think that all that stuff is obviously, fake news. We got to try to kind of relay that to our people.
I love, Tammy, your statement on our narrative should be positive and we should handle these questions with grace.
Yeah.
Guys, if we get defensive, it's like we've done something wrong. We haven't done anything wrong.
Yeah.
So answer their questions, have your narrative ready. We will help you, but absolutely love the positive with grace.
Yeah, and I agree 100% with Joan Stansfield. I'm assuming that's JoJo in here. Is, we have to stop talking about changes that we don't know that have happened yet as well. We're just preparing for how we're going to relay this stuff to each other in the future. But really, nothing has changed about today's market. It's all hypothetical. All the news media is blowing a lot of things up into thinking that it's going to have seismic changes in our thing. Nothing's seismic. Nothing's changing. In the sense that we may have to make sure that we are relaying whether we're paying commissions to the buyer side from the seller side in a different path that isn't in the MLS. That's the only real thing that's changed here.
Donnie, if I may, that for those who have ever done commercial with practitioners that are not realtor members, the majority of commercial brokers out there actually are not, the bigger ones are not realtor members, but so in that world, you always negotiate your commission up front.
Yeah.
So
yeah, commercial, that's a thing. It is the way of the world, and you're right. I don't do a lot of commercial, except I do all our own offices. And look, when I go to find a property, I have to ask right away, look, this is what I want my commission to be as part of the deal. Now in commercial, we got a little more leverage. They don't have 20 offers coming in at the same time. But, I think that that's more a path of where it's going to go. But I think it's kind of on steroids in the sense that there's going to be 20 agents out. You're not going to want to have to answer every single agent that calls and asks. That's why if there's a place we can put it would be great. Somebody, can we suggest MLS to not remove the co-op broker slot and allow for 0%, which I think should not be the case?
Oh, we're little old Samson. We don't have anything to do with that.
Yeah, I mean, even we are the #1 office in all of Bright, but they're not going to be allowed to do that based on the laws of or what they're agreeing to in the settlement. Ted Durag, yeah, we talked about VA.
Lots of questions about whether the associations have a campaign to kind of counter some of the media. I have not heard anything yet. I think they're still trying to work through the details of the settlement.
I think it's something we do have a very great relationship with Ryan McLaughlin, who's the CEO of MVAR and some of these other associations, and our size does give us a certain sway. So it's certainly something. I actually was just texting with Ryan at the beginning of this meeting. I think it's something that we certainly will encourage. I don't know how much the local associations are going to be able to make a difference, but an NAR is probably going to be a little careful about how much they spend money. They're going to be on the hook for a little bit of money going forward, because all those advertising and those things that they cost money, right? I do think that some of these leaders should be on these all these news shows, the CNNs and all the different ones in the world, having interviews about what this really means, because NAR is pretty strong about defending their position that they actually don't think they were wrong. And they think they just agreed to the settlement because they thought it was the path of least resistance. But that message needs to get out. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, Tammy, we are over the 2 billion in sales for 2022. So we are not part of the settlement technically. More to come on this side. That's more of a Samson leadership talking to their problems, not an agent problem.
Can guys, I've got like 4 questions on here that continue to come in about specific amounts. There is no company minimums for offering or paying. We still have our advertising minimums in place, but we do not have minimums as far as you have to accept what fee, you have to pay what fee. So I'm deleting all of these questions about whether or not there's specific minimums. This is your business. It always has been your business. You need to negotiate what your fee is.
We have not talked to First Heritage all about this, about the buyer's agent fee being able to finance if the seller will not help with it. So I think it's probably too new for them to know, but I don't think that that's something that they're going to be able to arbitrarily I think it's going to be more Fannie Freddie guidelines and some things, because they're going to have to be some appraisal cutouts on stuff like that if they get to that point. And it not being, is it have to be included in appraisals or not, that type of thing. If they were allowed to finance it, essentially they are by giving them the closing costs, right? See any other questions here you want to answer?
Oh, I love Gabriel's script that he's using. This is how he handles it. Is this okay? Mr. and Miss Buyer, I charge 2.5% compensation. Fortunately, the seller offered commission often covers all or much of it. I'll let you know on the occasions where the sellers offer less than my compensation so that you'll know how much of that difference will be added to your settlement charges. Amen. That's great.
Charles Kim, the best thing now to tell people is to buy now before July so that they're taking. I like that.
Way to go.
Get the buyers out there now. Richard, did you mention the new buyer agreement must include total compensation in the agreement, meaning unless you indicate that a bonus offer would be printed? I don't understand the question. Do you see Richard's question? I'll answer Katrina's.
It's not a question.
Oh, go ahead.
It's a statement. One of the nuances, I'm about halfway through the settlement, the 108-page settlement. And one of the things that jumped out at me is bonuses in the past. If the market ever were to shift and you were to go to let's say a builder, and the builder was offering an incentive on top of whatever the gross commission is, you would have to have that indicated in your buyer broker agreement to receive that compensation. You can't just have a blanket statement, I make this, and then anything above it. You have to say specifically what it is you're allowed to earn.
We'll see how the associations handle that with their standard forms. Richard, that's a good point, but for now, obviously, Kara can speak to the Maryland ones, but the NVAR document says clearly we're entitled to any additional amount that's paid by the seller, builder or regular seller, whatever, over and above the amount that we're talking to our buyer about possibly being on the hook for. I mean, so it's already in there.
So, yeah, we got a question about dual agency representation allowed by Samson now. Mike, can you speak to that a little bit about dual agency?
So we are going to continue to discourage dual agency in the states where it is legal, like Virginia. At the agent level, our position is going to continue to be, don't engage in dual agency unless there's a really, really good reason and with prior broker consultation. Okay, that's in our policies and procedures. For Virginia, no dual agency without prior broker consultation. In Virginia, it is legal. In Maryland, there is no such thing as dual agency at the agent level. I can't speak so much to West Virginia and Pennsylvania and Delaware, but when you sell your own listing to an unrepresented party, they know they're unrepresented. They come in off your sign or social media. They don't have their own agent. Very often they have an angle. They have a strategy. They're coming to you as the listing agent intentionally. Maybe they've lost out in a competitive bid situation previously with a buyer agent. Maybe they're not satisfied with their buyer agent and they think that they've got the best statistical chance of getting that property that they want after losing out on others if they go straight to the listing agent. Or maybe they think that they're going to get the best possible overall terms by going straight to the listing agent. Sometimes they may be right on that. We fully believe in buyer agency. You are allowed in Virginia. We don't have a flat out prohibition against dual agency in Virginia, but we strongly discourage it because 95% of the time it's not needed. The buyer's not asking for representation. They're an unrepresented customer, not a client. Classic example of where buyer agency makes sense to me dual agency makes sense to me in Virginia is if you have the buyer first, you got a buyer agency agreement, you clearly you and the company have a client relationship with the buyer. That's established. Then you get a listing. Well, by definition, you got two clients there. And if your existing buyer client wants to buy that listing in Virginia, I think that's one of the reasons why in Virginia they still have it. I'm not going to tell you you can't do that. It is legal in Virginia. You got to have the proper consent in your listing agreement and the proper consent in your buyer agency agreement, and then your standalone disclosure brokerage relationship. So that goes for rentals too. As far as Maryland, there is no such thing like that. It's unrepresented. It's all about disclosure. You can sell your own listing as long as it is in your client's best interest. Our objective is to make sure that you're not double-ending deals, especially off market, that are never exposed to the open market, so that you can earn more commission. If it really meets your seller's needs, or your client's needs, and the company's client's needs, great. Kara, anything further on that?
No, that was it. We can we represent the seller, and in that situation, you would refer out the buyer to another agent if they wanted to write on that offer, but and be represented. But
and none of this changes. None of this settlement.
None of that
changes.
None of that
anything about
changes.
Agency.
You're right. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna add a lot of times this question comes up regarding dual agency because of compensation. So I'm assuming that a lot of this conversation regarding dual agency is in the future, right? I mean, when you have a listing and you're not offering buyer compensation out through the MLS, but you may be offering compensation out to a buyer agent, and you want to act as a dual agent in order to recoup that money on both sides. So you're going to have to address that in your listing agreement regarding the variable rate compensation. So,
yeah. And
also I think, Mike, no dual agency on rentals, right?
Right. But that's really another topic, a broad topic, that we could, if anybody wants to speak to Steve or me or Kara or any of us on that, just reach out.
Just going through some of these.
Yeah, I'm going through some of these things too.
I'm answering some of you by text if I think I can do that, but somebody
But
asked.
remember, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, remember, the way we handle real estate has not changed. How we handle unrepresented parties has not changed. We're still doing ministerial acts. Our job is to be a professional real estate. That has not changed. We're still conducting at the highest level of professionalism. It's just the verbiage we're using to explain how we get paid. That's all that's changing.
So Cynthia says, as listing agents, are we obligated to work with an unrepresented buyer? If so, who prepares the contract and what contract would be used?
So
I'll take that one. You're never obligated to work with anybody. You do have to keep what your client's best interests are in mind. So if you're a listing agent, there's a buyer comes along and they're not unrepresented, it is your job to try to sell that listing. And so you should be working with that buyer. We do, and you would be hopefully working with that buyer as an unrepresented customer, providing all of the ministerial services. You would write the offer. Don't ever let a buyer, try not to ever let an unrepresented buyer write up their own offer. Okay. You take charge of the transaction. You're the professional, and you draft the offer with standardized forms whenever possible that we're familiar with. They're covered under our E&O, and we can properly advise our client. Does that answer that?
Yeah, I think that the other point I would add is this: if you have a seller that was unwilling to pay a buyer's agent, this would be part of the conversation I would have with them.
So that's where that question comes from, I guess.
I think is like but if a seller said, look, I don't want to pay a buyer agent, then I'd say, well, how do I handle it when somebody comes to me and says, I want to write an offer on your property, so I'm supposed to do extra work for free, and they want to be represented, but they can't afford it, I think that there really becomes a conundrum there where sellers have to look at you and understand and say, okay, well, now we need to talk about why we should be offering something out to that other side. Because most people that come in unrepresented, to Sarah's point, they're only doing it because they think they're going to get a better deal, right? They're not doing it because
they think they're entitled to that buyer broker commission.
Right. They're not doing it because they don't want representation. They're doing it because they think they can get a better deal out of the equation. But, I'm not sure how hard it is or how fair it is to do extra work without any kind of compensation.
Donnie, I would just say that I'm certain that we don't need to act in the capacity of a dual agent in order to be compensated.
Right.
By that buyer in that case.
Yeah, I agree. I'm also seeing a couple notes about when it comes to like discounts or, do we see flat fees come in? I wouldn't spend a lot of time stressing about that right now. I think that some people would say that we spend a lot of time huffing and puffing about Redfin and their 1% listings on the other side, right? They have like 2% of the market share on listings. They're not a huge player in any of the areas that we do business. Do I think that there will be some buyer agents or some agencies that come out and attempt to do I'll help you as the buyer agent side for $1,000 or this or that? I think there's always going to be somebody that's going to try and do it cheaper, right? I think the key there is to show your value. Do you want to work with an agent that's not really engaged in your process and is not the best in their business at this? Because if you do, then go ahead. You can find somebody cheaper, right? But if you want somebody that's going to represent your best interest, get you the best deal, and represent you the best way possible, then you need to be paying closer to a full rate for commission. So I would not worry so much about the ads that I'm sure will come out with somebody that will represent you as a buyer agent for $1,000 or write your contract for $500. Those things are going to happen. But those people are also running to do FSBOs now because the people that are convinced to do that are okay with having the worst service and paying the least amount of money for it. So don't stress, control what you can control. We can't control that there's going to be 1 or 2% of the realtors that run to the bottom of the barrel to try to pick up a couple of bucks. Control what you can control, which is become a great educated realtor, provide great value, and we'll continue to get paid the money that we deserve to get paid on each transaction.
Yeah. And when it comes to our listings and us brokers that are signing your listing agreements, just be prepared that one of the questions that we ask of you, and you need to be thinking about, is when you're going on these listing appointments, what's your game plan? What's your strategy? Who's making that decision that they're not interested in paying co-op? Because that's the seller. I would caution any of our agents from trying to come up with a new discounted business plan to go after sellers that they otherwise might not have any hope for because of the lowest denominator commission, total commission, at the expense of perfecting your listing presentation. Keep focusing on your skills and how to justify your value.
I do like what Jeffrey Kallmeyer put in the chat here. I explained to sellers that we share what they pay us. They're not paying the buyer's agent. We want to incentivize agents to bring their buyers so that we can get the best offer for their seller. That's really what cooperative policy is all about, right? Is that, it's not necessarily that they're paying the buyer's agent. I mean, they are in a sense, but that you pay us this commission and we're going to share with the other side so that they can be represented. We can market to more people and they can help bring you the best offer by offering it out to a bigger pool of people to go find that buyer for you. So I think that some of those terms are better when it comes to explaining these types of things to people. Katrina, how it affects appraisals. I'm not really sure it will, in the sense that, we're not putting a ton on top of these purchase prices right now. If it's a closing cost and they have to inflate the price to get there, it's one thing, but I'm not so sure that it will, unless the seller comes in and says, well, if you want your thing, I'll take the deal at 600 grand, but if you want your agent to be paid, then it's got to be 615 with 15 back in closing costs. I'm not so sure that I think it's just going to become more universally acceptable that the price is at
Subsidies,
closing costs.
like a normal market, you see subsidies.
Right. I think that's what it probably is going to be more like in that sense. If anything, that they were kind of inflated because the people were capturing all 5% or 6% or whatever percent they were charging outside of the closings or outside of the price point before. Somebody, and you're anonymous, so I don't mean to not say who you are, but you put this in the chat too. I just got off another webinar saying this morning that they said the settlement is only for a period of 7 years, not permanent. Is this true? I have not heard that anywhere.
I haven't heard that yet.
Saying it's not true, but I have not read that anywhere. Doesn't mean it's not true, but it hasn't crossed my eyes yet. And I've read quite a few things on it, but I may find that out later. Ted, about the VA stuff, I don't know that we can answer anything about VA right now because there's just literally no way, in my opinion, that we get to July and VA hasn't changed this rule in some way. We can't function. There's too many broken things with how the system treats VA buyers and their fees to how this new world might have to look. Ali, I've not seen the Federal Reserve Bank of Richmond under the Title Real Estate Commission and Home Buying Survey. I don't know if any of you all have.
Here's
Kathy
one
asked,
that I really like. Kelly from her iPad sent, sorry if this question's already been asked. Let's say you have a buyer agreement and you show a home, write an offer for the buyer, and the seller does not agree to pay the buyer's agent compensation, and the buyer cannot pay the agent's fee. Can the buyer still continue on with the contract to purchase the home if the buyer's agent decides not to represent without getting compensated? Wouldn't that fall back on procuring costs? Guys, we got to change our mindset a little bit about this, because it's not that we're going to continue showing houses on the off chance that it can be covered or not. We have to have a conversation with them and tell them that they may be responsible for paying the fee, and that needs to be included in their mindset on the closing cost. And then if the seller pays for it, that's great. But ultimately, it's a business decision for you. If you get down the pipe and you find out that they can't pay for it for whatever reason, that's a business decision on whether or not you continue to work with them. Now, I will tell you, and I don't mean this to sound ugly and judgmental in any way, but I think it's pretty shitty if you don't tell them that they could be responsible for it up front and then you leave them holding the bag and drop them because they can't pay you. I think that's a pretty shitty thing to do, and it's not really professional. So we need to be really careful about how we position this. But again, having the right conversations with you may be held responsible, and having that discussion with the lender to say, what are their closing costs and do they have it? And what if they have to pay me? Again, this is all the professional conversations we need to be having with their lender. I have a really unfavorable opinion. I feel like if people cannot afford their closing costs, they have no business buying a house. And the reason I have that opinion is because they have no, I don't mean it to be painful, but if they can't afford to get in the house, then they certainly are going to have a hard time affording when the HVAC breaks, when the roof leaks, when something catastrophic happens, they're just not prepared. I love the idea of everyone owning a home, but not everybody should be buying one right now just because we want to put them in one, right? I think people need to be financially able to purchase the home and maintain it. So let's make sure we're having the right conversations in professional ways and making sure that we are professionally serving them in a full service way.
Okay.
Oh, I'm getting some amens.
uh,
Preach, baby.
Nancy had an interesting thought here, and I'll answer it, but I take a listing compensation for X. The seller tells me that he or she will only offer 1/4 of X to the buyer's agent. I've never taken more compensation as a listing agent than the seller agent. I see this happening moving forward. Leadership, what are your thoughts? You know, I think that my first opinion is this. I think you have to probably try to explain to your seller that why you would disagree with this path. But if they're unwilling to do that up front, I think that all you can say is, okay, fine, I will advertise it this way, that you're offering out whatever, 1% to the buyer's agent. I think the buyer's agent may put that as part of the offer, that they offer another 1 or 2 or whatever the number is. And I think that if you've had these conversations with your sellers up front, then, you know, these buyers can still put it in the offers and the sellers can say yes, no, or maybe so. I think explaining to them that you have the ability to get to more buyer agents and to have buyer agents have good representation. And Casey's made a big point of this in some of the stuff he's released, is that, you know, when he gets 15 offers in, the first thing he reviews is who are the buyer agents on the other side. Because it's not because of who he likes or doesn't like, but he wants a seasoned pro, somebody that he knows is going to get to the finish line. Somebody can write a great offer on a piece of paper, but if they don't know how to if they don't know how to be a professional in real estate, they're not going to have a great chance of helping get that buyer to the finish line. You know, so I think that part of my dialogue with my sellers at that point might be, we want to have the best buyers agents out there showing your property, out there listing, out there trying to find buyers for your property, and ultimately being on the other side of this so that we have the best chance of getting you a great settlement. You know, and if we don't do these things, there's a possibility that, I'm not saying buyer agents would or wouldn't not want to go to your property, but we're opening up the possibility to not having the best people show our property. And I wouldn't want to open up that possibility.
And remind those sellers every time, those kinds of sellers, they don't have to ratify a contract. They're not gonna, presumably, unless it's satisfactory, unless they perceive that it approximates the best they're likely to do in our market. And it's a buyer that's paying that with their down payment and their loan proceeds. So they need to keep it in perspective that I sound like a broken record, but if nobody's going to convince me that the buyer's not paying the commission anyway, every bit as much as the seller or more. They're just financing it over time.
And guys, you know, thinking about this too, Rosita reminded me, and thanks, Rosita. She said, I was told by New York clients that in New York, buyers pay their agents. Do any of you know how they do that? Guys, this is just like if we go and we represent the buyer and we show a FSBO, right? They haven't offered compensation as a FSBO. They didn't offer compensation in the MLS that we were guaranteed to be paid. They put it on a sign in the yard or put it in the newspaper. Yes, I'm that old Donnie. But at the end of the day, we walked in and we said, will you pay us? Because I have clients that are interested in the house and this is how much I would like for you to pay. And they'll say, I'll pay this. Okay. We then had a business decision on whether or not we were going to charge our buyers the balance or not. Or if the FSBO said, no, I'm not paying you, then you will get back to your buyers and you're like, hey, I'm going to do this deal for you, but they're not willing to pay my commission. And remember, my buyer broker says that I'm offered 3%. So if you go back far enough, we've negotiated those before. This is nothing new. So those of you that have been in the business for a while, remember back to before buyer agency, remember back to when we were doing a lot of FSBOs. This is the same thing. We just tell clients they owe us the money. I will tell you, even in our markets over the last couple of years where sellers, and I say couple being like 20, there's small exaggeration. But when I say, you know, the sellers are going to pay, there have been times where I've said sellers only offering this and this is my fee. And yes, I'm going to charge you the delta. Now, I personally call that the PETA fee, but I've charged the delta.
What's
So
a PETA mean?
you're a pain in my ass,
All right, just checking.
that fee. But what we need to remember is that we're professionals and we're sitting down and we're having a conversation and we're saying, this is what I get paid to do this job. And this is what I'm going to do for you. And in most cases, the seller's going to pay it. But if they don't, some of that could come back and it will be part of your closing cost. All of that gets talked about up front and have those professional conversations. So I do love it. Yes, other jurisdictions do not do seller representation. I think there are 2 states out of the 50 that do flat buyers pay their buyer's agency. That was leading into this. Most of the sellers did. But just like FSBOs, think about the same conversation you would have with a FSBO. It's the same thing.
So Arabella asked if buyer agency commission be enforceable without the MLS if it's paid by the seller. Who holds the seller accountable for that commission? Well, you know, I would think it depends where it's written, right? If it's in the contract, it's part of the contract that they're paying it, right? You know,
Yeah, I think that what we're gonna see is if commission agreements.
yeah, I think there'd be
Broker to
a
broker.
commission agreement between, you know, the listing brokerage and the selling brokerage to make sure that there's an established agreed upon, because normally the MLS is our guide. But if it's not a separate commission agreement, then it would be a part of the contract, which has been pretty clear so far that it's allowed to be in there, which is a change from how we used to do business forever, right? But our commission's always been dictated by the MLS until 6 months ago, when all of a sudden it wasn't okay anymore. But I think that writing it into the contract or a separate commission agreement is probably the answer to those things, Arabella. And in that case, the brokerage, you know, is accountable because they've agreed they're getting, you know, I just keep using this round number, but they're getting 5% from their seller and they're giving out 2.5%. Well, you know, it's in writing in their agreement to their seller and then a separate agreement to us. And if it's in the contract, then they've got to pay it out. It's part of the contract. What else do you see here? A couple things about upfront retention agreements or upfront payments, $500 for buyers. Look, you can do that stuff now. You know, I think that it's a matter if you're going to get a buyer to pay it, but an upfront payment it's not a bad idea to hold a deductible $500 or $1,000 to take them on as your buyer's agent. But it's about a supply and demand world. If you can get a buyer to pay it, it's the same thing as a retainer fee for a lawyer. You know, some charge it, some don't. You know, and if you're a client and you don't want to pay a retainer fee, you're going to go find another lawyer that doesn't charge one, right? So if you feel comfortable charging it, you can, you know, but that's on you.
Possibility of DOJ, no clue, no crystal ball here. I think I expect some tweaks. Because they tweak everything. The DOJ is a little crazy. So we have
They
no idea.
started all of this
Yeah, they're the ones that
10
started
years
it.
ago.
I think that there's a lot of people out for blood here with the DOJ, and hopefully they accept that we've done enough here and they let it go and approve it. Maybe they'll continue to push on their angle and we'll adjust then. If they say that no cooperative is allowed at all, then we'll have to adjust our path then, right? And then we're going to be looking at lenders to let them finance them in, you know, I think would be the next step. And if that
It is hard to believe that the ruling is this strong that, you know, no offers of compensation. We got plenty of sellers that want to offer compensation. So they're saying they can't in the MLS. I think it is obviously very extreme, and there's going to be the workarounds we're talking about. But yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Do you see this naturally encouraging steering to listings that pay towards buyer agent commissions? I think that they would want me to answer no to that publicly. I think that the real world says that that's why we offer commissions, right? We want to make sure that that doesn't happen in the back of people's minds. But their goal in taking the commission field off is to stop the steering of buyer agents to just go to places that they're being paid.
And technically, we would have a hard time seeing it unless we sit there and hit all of these different sites and places that we were going to find it. But, you know, you may have a client that says, I don't want to pay anything, so only show me houses that pay. You know, you've got to be prepared to have those conversations.
I'll tell you what I wouldn't want to do if I got one chance to sell my house. Find out. I don't want to be the one that finds out if 25% of the showings come in. You get that one chance to make a first impression that first weekend. And if I had 6 showings because I didn't offer something out and I got 25 showings if I did, I wouldn't want to be the test case dummy. I'd want to make sure that I got the 25 showings.
And an opportunity to sell your house for a record price.
Guys, and just to let you know, Kara dropped in the chat the 179 ways real estate agents, that NAR document. She dropped that in the chat if you want to pull it down.
I'm also
and use it.
dropping the 105 more ways, the newer one as well.
Awesome. You go.
There's 2 of them.
There you go.
So you can
I
create
think-
I'd create my own from there. So, you know,
Yeah. And I would create
gives
your
you
own-
confidence. And
That's something I've talked to Richard and Lynn about on the Samson angle in our new classes is, look, the 179 is great, but maybe we create a Samson way that it's like Kara saying, create your own way. But, you know, some of them are probably get to a little bit of the, not irrelevant, but, you know, we're digging down a little bit too deep when we go to 179 probably, right? But if we had the 50 real things that matter, you know, not to say they all don't matter, but you know what I mean?
it should match your business plan, your presentation, tailor it to what you offer and your,
Right.
you know, your personality, your business, your services.
Right. Anything else you want to tackle there, Sarah, Kara, Mike, that you see?
I'm diving in. Oh, Prudence, does that mean that the sellers can still pay the 6% to listing broker and they don't have to share with the buyer's agent? Yeah, wow. That is a
Prudence.
minefield.
That's the Sarah Mormon style.
That is a Sarah Mormon style. I love that because I love me a good 6%. I will say to you, technically by letter, as long as you put it in your listing agreement that that's what you're doing and you disclose you're not sharing, depending on what form you have. Virginia, you have to disclose what you're sharing. I believe Maryland still you do not disclose. Could you technically? Yes. Do I think it's in your seller's best interest? No.
Statistically, how would it be? You know, what
Right.
scenarios? I mean,
Yes.
unless it's a private exclusive where the seller doesn't want anybody coming through their house,
Right.
very confidential sale,
Right.
and they love you that much.
Or you're doing work in it and you're the super, or you're doing whatever. Like there are plenty of people that still get 7, 8%, whatever, because they do extra stuff. That's one thing. It depends on the situation, but as a typical open market, I would honestly, if I'm doing 6%, I'm going to still offer out my percentage out to peeps.
You know, Sarah, you're asking a question there that I think has come up as part of this. The hourly rate, any thoughts might be a way to do it. I don't necessarily want to jump on that bandwagon. I don't know that that's a hill that we want to die on as realtors. You know,
Hourly rate for sellers or for buyers, or
I think she's thinking meaning for buyers. I don't know. I mean, lawyers and doctors do it, right? Or lawyers do it, right? You know, and there are some professions that do it. I don't know that I think that's going to be a win for us. And I think that collecting money I think changing the way that people treat buyers, I think getting buyers to pay you $200, $300 an hour, whatever it is that you're going to try and charge them, upfront on an ongoing basis will be a seismic change that I think is going to be hard for buyers to reconcile. They're used to, okay, you get $10,000 at the end of the day, but it's paid for by the seller, or worst case, it's paid for by me, but maybe you're going to find some buyers that feel more comfortable paying you $200 an hour every hour that you're working, but I don't know that I would want to go out with that business plan and hope that people accept it.
and all of that would have to be paid through Samson Accounting.
Yeah, I think that's a weird, I think it's a harder change to make. I'm not saying that it's impossible that it goes that way, but I don't, I've heard people talk about that, but I really don't think that that's a path that are
Probably better to focus on retainer. If you can justify an incremental retainer. And you can have an agreement in your buyer agency agreement that it's X amount retainer for the first period of time until you get under contract. And then you could agree upon extended additional retainer. I mean, our time is valuable, right? You don't work for free.
Right. Katarina, when you price listings, we need to suggest lower price, but the seller's not decide to pay buy rate. You know, I don't know. Yeah. I
I'm
don't think it's
laughing
really-
at David. David said, we as a group cannot get our paperwork in on time. Can you imagine trying to keep track of your hours? Well played.
It's a good point, David. Katarina, I don't know that I would directly say that you got to price lower if you're not offering buy rates and compensation. But I would talk about the idea that they can price where they think the market is, but that they should be prepared for the fact that they're going to have to pay, that there's a lot of buyers that are going to want that included, you know? I don't know that you're going to directly price it differently one way or the other, but I do think that you're going to get the most amount of demand, the most amount of contracts, and the most amount of activity, the best offer for your property if you offer out that buyer agent commission. And Katie, that kind of goes to what you're talking about. You know, can you talk about how it would help a seller? You know, the one thing that helps me is I think about this. Look, you got one chance to go off on this. I can list at $600,000 and I can offer a buyer agent compensation and hope that it doesn't make a difference in our offers and our attraction. Or I can offer the 2.5% out or whatever the number is they feel comfortable offering out, and then know that I'm going to get the best amount of buyer agents and the most amount of activity on my property. I don't want to wake up a week from now and regret the fact that I went off the first way, you know, and all of a sudden I got one offer on the property and 5 people through, you know, and I would just say that right now that we know that a lot of buyers, they want representation, they deserve representation, and most of them can't afford to pay it or choose not to pay it out of their own pockets. If we include it as part of our offer of listing out there, we're going to get the most traction out there. We're going to get a good buyer agent on the other side, and we're going to have the best chance for successful closing. Those are some of the points that I would want to make. Any other last questions you guys see, or can we close up? Somebody asked earlier, is tomorrow going to be the same? You know, I would venture to say it's going to be similar. You know, I think that the idea was to have 2 different, I mean, there'll be less problems in the beginning getting all the things connected. I think the idea is it's going to be similar, but not everybody can make it on one day notice. So I wanted to give 2 opportunities for people to jump in and be a part of a conversation that's like this. So if you want to continue to hear it, or if some questions that we didn't get answered, certainly come back tomorrow. You know, and I've got it capped at 500 people, so hopefully we can do those things. I did record it. I don't know if we're gonna be able to have a way to put it on the Nest. I feel comfortable putting it on the Nest because it's a conversation with us. I obviously don't want to put anything out there publicly. So I will attempt to do that. This video being an hour and a half long, though, might have a lot of uploading problem, but we'll see about that.
Donnie, you know, many folks on here have probably already been on NAR site, and some of them subscribe to Inman and Risk Media, some of the other platforms. But people, you know, we're getting our information largely from the same sources that you can. So, I mean, take time if you want. If you really want to dig in, there's lots of good stuff out there, and some of it's sensationalized and some of it's speculative. But you know, it's day by day, and there's debates. There's a lot of good heads out there from NAR across the industry that are talking about all these issues. Check into that for yourselves if you want, because that's what we're trying to do, is monitor that and expect guidance from our realtor associations.
Maryland
Yeah.
Maryland Realtors has a webinar on Friday at noon if you want to register for that, where the leadership team will address the settlement and any concerns as well. I'll try to find that link to register and stick it in the chat.
Awesome. And I just want to follow on to, I think Donnie responded to Camilio on the, yes, I would still offer buyers compensation. Guys, I would still do it past July. It's just how we're showing it. It doesn't mean we're changing the way we're compensating buyers. We just can't show it in a compensation field in the bottom of the MLS. But we fundamentally believe, as a company, as leadership, as former salespeople, we fundamentally believe that the sellers offering compensation to the buyer's agents will greatly improve their ability for the best terms of their contract. So I feel like, and I will continue to offer it out on listings.
And do you, as buyer agents, not want to continue to see reasonable compensation for you when you're a buyer agent and not have to struggle? I mean, we get that a lot with as many listings as we have. The more our Samson agents are able to have the discussion, if not convince their sellers of the long proven value. I mean, the value of cooperative compensation over decades and decades and decades. This is all flash in the pan, new, and it's blown up the industry, but you know, the system's been in place a long time. Whole lot of people have bought homes thanks to good buyer agents who are compensated out of the transaction.
And Arabella, you're 100% correct. Markets change. The days when listings get saturated, we will start seeing your 3%, your $15,000 bonus, and your free trip to Fiji shown in compensation. And when there's not a lot of listings out there and the buyers come in mass, they don't necessarily pay as much. We see that ebb and flow with builders. It'll be the same thing. We're not expecting our world to change. We just have to get really good about showing our value and having conversations and transparency up front. You know, look, we can all have our opinions on this all day long, but the good thing about this is it's forcing an elevation of our professionalism. It's forcing an elevation of our negotiation skills. And quite frankly, it's treating the entire industry with a little bit more transparency. When we tend to like to get by with just sticking stuff through Dotloop and or DocuSign and having people go ding, 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 ding. Right? So that escalation is great.
The NAR site has statistics too that you might want to have at the ready. They're going to continue to push those out. Now, you know, their NAR statistics nationwide. Maybe our local associations will come out with, and Bright might come out with their own statistics that show on average what properties sell, the percentage increase that they sell for with open market exposure with buyer broker compensation. You know,
So Vanessa's got a great question here. I think we should hit it because I've seen it twice now in here. If a buyer says, I don't have the money to pay your commission, only show me listings that the seller will pay the buyer broker. I would not just show listings that said that they are paying the buyer broker. Vanessa, I would still show them all the listings, but I would note that this one's paying me, this one's not. This one's paying me, this one's not. Here's the amount that would be added to your closing costs because the seller's not paying it. I would show them all of it, but you can differentiate which ones the buyers are going to be responsible for paying you on and the ones that the seller's going to pay you on.
or again, those that they're going to need to write it into their offer and take a shot
Right.
at getting
That's
it covered. Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
same kind of conversation that we've had anyway, with the difference in payment from the buyer broker agreement to
Right.
what the seller offers. So, yeah,
And
we just
again,
have to ask
how-
now.
how are we going to find out? We don't know yet. Guys, y'all, I've gotten about a dozen in the last few minutes. How are we going to know? I don't know. We don't know yet. They'll give us what's allowed and not allowed. And, you know, again, like Tammy just said, and I said it earlier,
bet you.
it's no different than FSBO. So we may have to pick up the phone and call people or send a text and chat.
Currently, so you guys currently in the agent remarks, you can have a URL or no? In the agent remarks?
I believe it can.
We think so, but we don't know yet.
I think it'll be more clear. Guys, remember, we want to prepare, we're talking these things out. We're going to keep everybody updated along the path, continue to build our value, continue to learn, but nothing's definitive until 120 days from now when they actually put these things into effect, which is a long time in the grand scheme of the world. You know, so the specific things we don't really for sure know, but we're doing the best we can as it comes out. But, you know, hopefully all these are all great questions and I love it. And, you know,
Yep,
I
all
appreciate
good.
so many people popping in. We were at 500 for most of it and 354, 450, 500 most of it, which is awesome. We are going to do this again tomorrow, 1 o'clock Eastern. I don't know why I said Eastern. I guess I'm used to some of these other meetings I have and they have to book which time zone.
Yes.
We do our sales meeting tomorrow morning as well. We won't touch a ton on this because I think it's about the other stuff. I want to keep the conversations about commissions in these separate Zooms. So we do our sales meeting tomorrow morning. We encourage everybody to hop on. I know Casey's going to be a guest. Kara's got some knowledge to drop on us tomorrow. She'll be in the house. We have somebody new for Cardinal. We're excited about that. We're going to introduce. So some exciting things for our sales meeting tomorrow. But you know, that'll be more about what's going on at Samson, what's going on in the market, and then we'll have another commission Zoom at 1 o'clock. So look forward
Yeah,
to
I'll
seeing
say-
everybody tomorrow. Go ahead.
2 answers. One, it has to be specific. You can't give a range in your buyer broker's guide. You've never been able to give a range because we can't collect a range. So you need a specific number. And 2, guys, just be careful about saying yes or no. It definitively is or is not. This is a proposed settlement that's in front of the court. No one knows. The plaintiffs, the attorneys, quite frankly, no one knows how this is going to shake or play out. So please don't falsify any information and further it on as well. I know you can do this and I know you can't do this because we don't know anything right now. It's all up in the air. We're just trying to work through the muck together. But be positive, full of grace. Love it.
You gonna interrupt my closing again? You got more to say?
I did. I'm
No,
done.
go make
I'm
some
answering
money, man.
questions. They were still firing in, so I was answering.
They're gonna always keep firing. At some point, we gotta stop, Mormon.
I'm done. I'm done.
Hey, closing. Thank you all for everything you do. We're here for you. Obviously, you know, it's easier doing big formats like this than 5,000 questions to all, you know, 5 or 10 of our lead brokers here. But thank you all for all your hard work out there. We're here to support you. We'll keep you posted and continue to stay together and continue to support Cardinal Title Group and Samson the best way we can. We'll see you at our sales meeting tomorrow and at another Zoom tomorrow and hopefully around your offices soon.
Bye, guys. Take care.
Thank you, Donnie, Sarah, Mike.
Thank you, everybody.